Fort Stevens today. This is on the mouth of the Columbia River, just as it goes into the Pacific Ocean. And this fort was first established in 1863 by Abraham Lincoln. It wasn't completed until just days before the end of the Civil War. But even in 1863, they realized that any enemy ship coming up the river, just a single ship could completely stop shipping in the Columbia here. As you see, it's just an earthworks fort. It's not very big, and it's surrounded by a moat. This is actually a reproduction of the original fort. Wow, look at this view. It's gorgeous here. And obviously, this is why there's a fort here. Next to me here are 10-inch Rodman cannons. These would have been used during the Civil War and just afterwards. Of course, long before settlers came here, Indians lived here. And this was a seasonal home for the Clatsop Indians. There used to be a longhouse replica here, but sadly it fell down, and the only thing that has lasted is the doorway. But yeah, this was for thousands of years a seasonal home for Clatsop Indians here in the Northwest. When Lewis and Clark arrived here in the winter of 1805 and 1806, they traded extensively with the Clatsop for things they needed at the time. In fact, the Clatsop Indians essentially saved their lives by trading with them and providing food and all sorts of things they needed. So Battery Pratt would have had two of these 6-inch guns. They're 6 inches because that is the diameter of the bore, and that's also the size or the diameter of the shell that would have gone in it. This is what's called a disappearing gun. It's actually on a carriage, and the whole gun would have been set up. It would have been loaded and aimed and everything in this position. And then when it was ready to fire, it would have been raised up over the parapet and then fired, and the repercussion from the gun would have shoved it back down into the hole here. There was a couple of reasons for having these disappearing guns. One is that from the other side, from the Columbia River, all you would have seen here is a hill. You would have not seen any indication of fortification and guns. The other big reason was that soldiers could load and service this weapon from relative safety, well, pretty much complete safety here. So they could load, service, and do everything they needed to do without ever showing themselves to enemies. Right here is a little spotter's area where a spotter would have looked over and seen where the shot landed. It's really cool, like right here too. This is for communication. It's just simple tubes. They're actually all over the place, and so they would have yelled down into the tube to communicate with people down below. Hello, hello. Right here is where the shells and the powder would have been brought up from below to fire the gun. So we can actually go downstairs and see where it starts at. So down here is what's called the magazine. And right in this room right here, this is where the powder was kept. And there's replica powder cartridges in here. The powder would have been kept in silk bags. So the shells would have been kept separately in this room over here. And then the shells would have been loaded up. There's a track overhead. So this track, the shells would have been moved here onto this tray. And then via this tray, they would have been loaded upstairs. Well, I really wanted to show you how battery Pratt works, simply because I'm going to go into battery Mishler here in another 5 or 10 minutes, and it works exactly the same, only much, much bigger, and it's completely underground. And so, yeah, when we go through Mishler, I don't know if I'll be able to talk because it's only available by a tour, and so I'm going to take the tour, and yeah, it's just like this, only much, much bigger. Well, that was really awesome and amazing. So I don't know how much I could really include from the tour because, yeah, it was all over, but I just wanted to point out battery Mishler was very rare. This is the only place like it at all because the 10-inch gun that was in there could rotate 360 degrees and it receded all the way into the ground. Only one other battery was built in that manner, and it was down in Texas. And soon after it was built, it was dismantled for a flood, or an expected flood, and never put back together again. So this was the only place like it. And actually, from a story that's on the door there, essentially, there's probably a pretty good reason. If you're unable to pause and read the little story, essentially because of the very thick concrete walls completely surrounding the gun, the concussion blast from the gun killed 6 soldiers on one of its very early test firings. So yeah, it was a very dangerous gun, and subsequently they didn't create any more batteries like Mishler. These are batteries Meriwether Lewis and Walker, and they were built in 1898. They had 10-inch guns just like Mishler did. However, the guns were removed during World War I and shipped to France to help in the war effort. So by the time World War II came around, these weren't even being used at all. I wanted to come up here to the top of Mishler and show you what the top of it looked like. As you can see, Battery Mishler has now been completely capped off. It was actually capped off in 1941 and converted into a command bunker. So, yeah, kind of cool. This is battery 245, and it is dark in here. But my other glasses are in my car, which is far away, so just kind of wandering through here. It's really cool. Battery 245 was built in 1944 to shore up defenses, and this one purposefully looked out over the sea, because Battery Pratt only looked out over the Columbia River. So, pretty cool. Oh, and here's the magazine room. The magazine room would have been where you came to read Elle and Vogue and Time and all the really great magazines of the day. I'm getting a little tired. Hello? Hello? It is empty. Oh, I didn't even look. I didn't even read what this room was. I have no idea. It's just one more room. This place is huge. And I don't think all the noises are from me. Alright, well I guess I'm done. That about concludes this part of the trip. Battery 245 originally had two 6-inch guns, and if I remember the tour guide correctly, those guns were removed right at the end of World War II and actually sent to the Bikini Atoll for the nuclear tests. So they replaced them with two 5-inch guns from a ship. And they're pretty similar, or pretty much almost identical, except that these are fully enclosed, whereas the other one, the back end, would have been open. But you have a beautiful view up here. I mean, gosh. Look at this view. I'm back at camp, and well, the weather has really taken a turn. It's like, I'm not cold, but yeah, it's drizzling. Like, I don't even know if it's drizzling or just a really thick fog. I'm gonna fix something to eat. Not really sure what. something small because in the next few days I'm going to go to my mother's and I always eat way too much. So try to eat small today because I'm going to eat big for the next few days. But alright, well, I'm going to say goodnight here. And alright, good night. This is the Peter Iredale. It washed ashore in 1906, and well, only really the bow and a few other pieces remain, but yeah, pretty cool, huh? From this angle over here, you can definitely tell it's the bow of the ship. This here is one of the masts. Most of the ship was sold for scrap, so a scrapper locally came and took away most of the ship, but for some reason they left the bow, perhaps just as a tourist thing. Well, I definitely have to get back now. I'm heading to Portland today, so time to go.